Look, I'm not going to sit here and do the thing of shaming parents. It's a great start to a show, right? I'm not going to shame parents because we parents do plenty of it ourselves. We're pretty hard on ourselves. We're pretty hard on other people. So I'm not intending any of this to shame at all. I like to give most of us the benefit of the doubt and say, look, there's nothing perfect. There's no perfect handbook. There's no perfect way. Most of us try really, really hard and we beat ourselves up about it. That's not what this is about. But you might take it that way. We're a generation of parents and grandparents. And I'm not quite sure where it all started. But we are a generation of parents and grandparents that have fallen for, ready for it, the sports specialization scam. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, you're going to know pretty soon. We've fallen for it because, for the most part, we've fallen for the my kid is going to get a scholarship scam. I hear this a lot. I've heard it a lot. I've been there. I'm sorry. Okay? It's very, very unlikely to happen. I didn't mean you can't enjoy the sports. I'm just saying that it's very unlikely. Your kid being the best in Northwest Austin doesn't mean they're going to get a scholarship. Got it? Now, I don't know that it's intended to be a scam, this whole new specialization thing. And there's a reason why I bring this up. I don't think it's intended to be a scam. I'll give the benefit of the doubt here, too, and say it's not intended to be a scam. But the sports specialization, and there's a definition and there's data, it doesn't work the way we think. In fact, the generation of kids, maybe a few generations of kids, and maybe even part of mine, but I don't want to use myself as an example too much. But generations of kids playing one sport year round and completely committed to it year round are more likely to be hurt by it in more ways than one, in multiple ways. And I know you don't want to believe it. I know people don't want to hear it, but this is pretty fascinating stuff. My opinion, it turns out, and this is backed up by science, okay? But I've had this opinion for a long time. And again, I've played at a very, very high level in multiple sports, in fact. I mean, ridiculously high levels. And it's not for everybody. It's not, most people are not cut out for it. I'm not even sure I recommend it most of the time. You're not going to get there. And if you do, it's not quite what you think. But this is now backed up by some science. And I don't know that people are going to listen. I don't think we are. But I've been against sports specialization for a long time. Most of my friends who have played at the highest levels would say the same thing. In fact, if we're at a kid's game, one of our kids' games, and we oftentimes just want to stay out of the way and just be the parent and don't offer any advice to anyone, we find ourselves nodding at each other. It doesn't work the way parents think. It just doesn't work, especially when it comes to football, which is really easy. All right, so scientists have defined this, and I think everybody can appreciate this. They've defined this, and I think they've nailed it. But the problem turns out that not only do they not get better at the sports, in spite of what you think, and most people believe, they get hurt and they often quit. It has diminishing returns. Buddy of mine, incredibly successful coach. I mean, the highest level and very successful. He and I have had this conversation. He even said, man, when I was growing up, I didn't do just one thing. And he goes, my best players are lacrosse players, and I can't get them to play my sport, and nobody does it anymore. They all just play one sport. So they've defined it. Here you go. Researchers say that specializing early, defined as training year-round before the age of 12. Okay, that's how they're defining this. And they say there are 3 questions to answer that define specialization. If you don't have kids, it's a thing. It's a big thing. In fact, people will fight you about this. Athletes who say yes to all 3 are considered specialization. 1, does the athlete train for one sport more than 8 months a year? 2, does the athlete choose one single main sport? 3, Did the athlete quit all other sports to focus on one? And I'm willing to bet most people listening right now, or know people, or even coach. And again, I don't think people intend any harm. I think most people have their kids, think they have the kids' best interests at heart. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work the way people think. But I dare say most kids in sports from anywhere from 6 to probably 17 are answering yes to most of this. Parents and grandparents are answering yes to most of this. And I'll give you at some point a soccer analysis of this. Having played it as a kid myself all over the world. All right, so it's not going to be popular, but it is backed up by science. The sports specialization obsession, I'll call it that. I don't want to say scam. It's wrong. It's close to a scam. There's nothing to back up, okay? And these are orthopedic surgeons who stumbled into this data. And I think they've stumbled into something that's probably spot on that I don't think people are going to want to hear. There's nothing to back up any success rate of kids specializing in one sport at a young age. That's not me saying that. Now, I have an opinion of that. That's the data. Okay? You don't become any better by only doing one thing. You're not losing ground by playing multiple sports. In fact, the data says you're better for it. And I think this mostly comes from a great place, right? We want great things for our kids, but in the process, we're not making them any better at the sport. In fact, they're getting kind of sick of it. And they get trained one way in certain muscle groups, and they start to lose. And this is a term I would throw at you about soccer in this country. As a kid who grew up as a generation of kind of the first elite group, this is why we don't have any creativity. We're programmed. We're formatted. Everything we do has cones and juice boxes and coaches, and everything is organized all the time. And a lot of sports is not that way. In fact, you don't want it to be that way. But we mean well, right? And so there's I think a pretty sensible criticism of soccer in this country that I think shows itself on the international level pretty often. But I think it goes to other sports as well. We don't have a generation of kids that have learned what a pickup game is. Okay, and this is going to sound like an old man there. And by the way, I was of a generation highly trained and taken under somebody's wing and a lot of money spent on him. And you don't end up being that creative an athlete. You really don't. In fact, you get worse. Right? We don't tolerate, nor do they even exist, games in the yard or games in the street or wherever. So this is, I don't know that this is necessarily a new thing, but certainly people know this. The business of club sports and it was pretty much started largely by soccer, then baseball, basketball, and everything is lacrosse, and it goes on and on and on. You know, the club sports obsession in this country is expensive, and we could debate whether or not it really returns the best, whether it's really helping or not. Again, I think they mean well, but when your kid is only doing one thing, the data says it's not working out the way you think. It's not going to work out the way you think. All right, here you go. There's several orthopedic surgeons. This is like a must read the New York Times today. I really do. It's a good weekend read for every parent. I'm not saying you turn around and argue with your kids about it. I'm not doing that at all. I'm just saying I think this is something we need to take in, and I think it shows itself a lot in modern day sports. I think actually, using the soccer example again, I think eventually, women, the United States was at the front end of girls playing soccer. We pushed it, we promoted it, and we've got a few generations of the best female soccer players in the world. We've owned the sport, but all of a sudden you've noticed everyone else is starting to catch up. They're playing now. We opened the door. One of the great stories in sports has been this country making it popular and making it okay for girls to grow up playing soccer, and the rest of the world where this was completely unheard of. Completely unheard of. I think largely until we said, no, this is great. Other countries have started playing and they're catching up fast. And I think because they play and they train as kids differently than we do. They tolerate pickup games and we don't. They're not as organized as we are. And I think they're quickly catching up, if not passing us by. All right, so here comes the orthopedic surgeon from Emory University, Dr. Niru Jayanthi, Jayanthi. He spent 2 decades studying the development of young athletes. He says there isn't a single study that shows that specializing in a single sport in childhood offers an advantage compared to multi-sport play. Instead, researchers tout the benefits of sampling, acquiring a diverse set of skills through different sports. I mean, that's unheard of today. It really is. If you don't have kids, I mean, if you even say to parents and coaches now, well, I think he or she's going to play basketball and soccer and this. Wait, what? No, it's year round. Okay, they've got data that says it doesn't make, there's no data that says anybody's any better. Sorry. Now, they may want to do it, but it's not making anybody any better. All right, he stumbled upon the issue of sports specialization by accident. He's a trained orthopedist, and he was studying injuries to tennis players. He and his colleagues discovered an interesting connection. In a study of 530 high-level tennis players between the ages of 12 to 18, 70% had specialized in tennis by the age of 10. I'm surprised it's that old. Feels like it's 6 or 7. The group was far more likely to suffer injuries than those who hadn't specialized. Okay, so then they thought, well, we'll just study this even further. And so they did. And what they found was not only are these kids getting hurt more often. Again, it's all repetitive use. Right? Any of us that are dumb enough to do the same exercise all the time. You walk, you jog, you do that stuff, high impact. Sooner or later, you're going to have the same injuries. Well, they've studied this stuff because they were starting to see kids have these repetitive injuries. It's because they're doing the same stuff. They're not cross-training. But then they took it even further and they said mentally doing the same thing, the same sport, makes you far less a creative of an athlete. I know that's a weird term to hear, but here you go. And they use Patrick Mahomes as an example, but that's, again, your kid, you don't understand. The elite athletes are just better than your kid. They're just better. I don't care what sport it is, they're going to be better. There's not a damn thing you can do about that. So enjoy it. Science reveals other advantages. Gregory Meyer, director of the Emory Sports Performance and Research Center, studied neuromuscular training and biomechanics. When an athlete samples multiple sports at a young age, it's not just about utilizing and building a diverse set of muscles. There's cognitive benefit. This is what I'm telling you about creativity. If you've ever played, I had the advantage of growing up playing in different countries around the world, and there was a creative aspect that just, you think, where did that come from? And it comes from playing other sports in the street where there's not rules, and there's not a Suburban parked over here, and there's not a fancy uniform. He says the process of acquiring diverse skills creates adaptability in the body and what he terms neural efficiency in the brain. Okay? They did a virtual study of all these athletes. He says in previous generations, a majority of sports experiences were found in casual, unorganized settings. Now the reverse is true. American kids spend twice as much time in organized sports as playing for fun. Bull. It's like 99% of the time. Do we have anything that's unorganized anymore, honestly? Research has shown that increased free play is a determinative factor in protecting against injury. It also helps develop better motor skills, increased creativity. Greg Olson, former tight end. This guy's really interesting. He started this thing, a platform. And I'll tell you this about most athletes that have been ultra elite, right? Been in the NFL, been playing in big time college sports. You kind of learn, hopefully, you leave your kids alone to play. You don't want them to have that thing where they go, well, your dad did this. You just want them to play and have fun. And then so I find that a lot of my friends are the same way. We just stay out of it, completely out of it. But Olson has done a pretty cool thing. He created this app, and he's an advocate of this. And I've watched some of his podcast episodes where he's been saying, leave them alone, everyone. But we can't we? It's called You Think, a platform focused on young athletes and their parents. He believes the mindset misses a crucial point of specialization. He says one of the best ways a talented athlete can grow is to not be good. Every sport offers a distinct culture, skill set, and fresh mental challenge. When a star football player spends his winters as a role player in a basketball team, it can physically challenge him or her while providing an essential perspective on teamwork. He says the truly elite athletes do not reveal themselves. This is what the doctors now say. And this is so true. This is why you can find people who don't play football at all growing up. And they pick it up when they're sophomore in high school and they catch the first ball they touch is a touchdown. Because they're just better. They're just athletic. Run and jump. Learn to run and jump. I think it's one of the mistakes we make with kids in every sport. Certainly I see it in soccer. Teach them to run, to move. The ball you'll figure that out. Instead of standing by cones. But the doctors, this is getting too nerdy. It says, but the truly elite athletes do not reveal themselves until after puberty, and the combination of early specialization and a lack of unstructured play is one reason. They're quitting at higher rates too. He says, this is one of the doctors, to me, quitting a sport early is our biggest risk factor now because we're losing that opportunity to create healthy physical activity and sports participation for the rest of our lives. I don't mean this to sound preachy, but I think it's a fascinating setup of data when we in this country, for all of our good reasons, let's assume, for all of our good intentions, we have created generations that violate every one of those principles, and myself is included. You know, there's two ways to look at it. You think your kid's going to be great, and so you start putting them what you think is in great environments. Ends up hurting them. Or there's some, like me, that are found at a young age, and people take them in and start training them like crazy. And that's not going to happen to your kids, okay? But the specialization doesn't work. We get hurt more, and we're not as good as we think. In fact, the kid that just comes over from the baseball field is just a better athlete. It's going to be better. Just going to be better. It's a good read. I recommend it for everyone. There's a lot of data, but they're not saying this to complain at parents. They're just saying you got to open your eyes. What you think, what we all think, I'll say we, what we think we're doing for our kids is just the opposite is happening. They're not better players. They're not. I think it's one of the reasons why on the World Cup stage, we have multiple generations now of really talented soccer players, men and women. And we just keep wondering. I saw this when I played in Europe. Why is that skinny dude? Why is he down the field more than me? How can that be? I'm faster than him. I don't get it. And you start to see this, I think, at the highest level, is that we lose some level of creativity that's picked up in completely unstructured play. Completely unstructured. Like we ought to have, I don't even know how it would probably ruin the mood, but we ought to require, and I know part of our problem is that we as adults sit around too much. We've gotten fat, we've gotten lazy, and we've turned it into our kids. But it's almost like once a week, we gotta just go make them play. Go play each other. Have a pickup game. They wouldn't even know what it is. I don't care. Make up your rules. The door's closed for the next hour and a half. They'd be better. Especially if they're playing multiple sports, the data says. Hey, here's a recommendation backed up by my own experience, a great experience. And that is, I've been a client of DJC Law, and I can tell you this. You're going to get three things with DJC Law. You'll notice it right away. The difference is you will get peace of mind. They will take care of every single detail perfectly, and you will get the result you deserve. If you're injured by the negligence of someone else, fighting with an insurance company for any reason, trust me when I tell you, you will need DJC Law. Dan Christensen and his team of attorneys have a remarkable track record. I've known Dan a long time. He's a military vet. He's board certified in civil trial law, and I've been a client. So you can trust them. You will get the result you deserve. Check out teamjustice.com, and you'll see thousands of 5-star reviews. The bottom line is, if you're in an accident, you need DJC Law. Contact them right away. 512-888-9999.